Anekantavad video. Yes, response video. I was going to play some of it, but figure we'll just wing it. So it's Renounce or Embrace, and I don't think he really got to that subject, but the end part, he got into the subject of deterrence again and guilt, and he went back to my metaphor of the snowball, but kind of turned it into, analogized it or compared it to karma. And I don't think that's the point I was going for, unless you want to talk about karma in a richer way, unless you want to think of karma as having the good luck to go to college, or having the good luck not to get addicted to drugs, or some kind of element of karma that's more practical. My analogy, I guess I'll change it. I'll just add to it to qualify kind of what I was trying to describe. Well, I'll add a component and a clarification, I guess. I think I implied, but it was just an implication, maybe not an explicit statement, but that I did say kind of that the snowball is filtering. So it's not a, you can compare it to dust or residue, but you could have also just as easily said it's enlightenment. That enlightenment isn't achieved in a day, especially going from a caveman to an enlightened man would require some kind of process of teacher and student and teacher and student. You'd have to go through that process a few times before you could expect to have something called enlightenment. It might not be achieved through one Buddha. Even Buddha might have been achieved through the fact that Buddha was educated. That Buddha lived a privileged life and had exposure to much reasoning and logic and knowledge, and therefore was able to see deeper into the game he was playing. He was being a part of, that he was a pawn in, and he could see that even though he was dressed in the king's robe, that like all the other pawns, he was being manipulated by the game. Probably not a terrible metaphor there. So, how you, what you choose to bend, the metaphor. So, we're all guilty of that. So I'm not faulting you for it, but I guess I'm just saying that, I think I was saying something a little deeper than we're obligated by some deterministic past. I was arguing that built into the determinism is things like enlightenment, like education, knowledge, that the map improves as the ball turns, that it selectively grabs pieces of the past, essentially, and it sloughs off pieces that nothing's clinging, nothing's grabbing them, neither our avarice, neither our desire, nor some intellectual motivation is saying let's keep that piece, and those pieces are left to the ash heap of unwritten history. So the written history and the possessed knowledge base contains these things that are considered valuable, the valuable stories, the well-told stories, the ones with that have positive impact on people, and then they write them down or they preserve them in the drawer. They don't let them get wet and ruined. They save them, and these are the things that the human race has saved. Now, I would agree that if we're going to say that, well, some humans save shit, true enough. But I would argue that the collective vault is rich. Okay, and even though Alexander burned and all the stuff of the Incas and the Aztecs and the rest of it, all that was the Mayas was just thrown in the garbage. Um, we still got a lot of the information, and we cherished it and rendered it into mythologies and the stories even that you tell. And so this snowball isn't just made of dust and crap that's incidental to us individually. It has a filtered character, and that filtering is based on learned concepts like fool me once, my bad, fool me twice. I mean, fool me once, you're bad, fool me twice, my bad, kind of, do unto others, lots of cliches, lots of pieces of wisdom. And I'm going to say they're wisdom, and they're not rubbish, they're not nothing. Alright, so that's, unless you want to tell me that karma can be that rich, then fine. So as long as we understand that karma has to do with the good fortune of your position in life, where you're born, and the opportunities that are provided you by circumstance, what butterfly flew close and did you a favor, then this metaphor sticks. Okay, so I was thinking of another add-on to it would be that this idea of determinism having meaning is in a sense our ability to be a butterfly. Now, I could argue that if I hold this cigarette here and I move it to the left, or I hold this cigarette here and I move it to the right, now if you could go back in time and reverse those two moves, that butterfly didn't change anything in the world. Donald Trump doesn't drop dead. Something wonderful doesn't happen, based on one thing versus the other thing. So it's a dead butterfly. It doesn't mean anything. And so there's lots of stuff in our lives that are inconsequential, in the sense they won't butterfly the future. And for the sake of this argument, you're going to have to concede my axiom that the future is ahead of the present and the past is behind it, and those are real concepts that have real meaning. You can't undo the past, and the future is what we're setting it up to be. We're going to be a link in the chain behind the future. Alright, and the links of the past are in steel, locked, can't be broken. So I would say that it's like when the snowball is rolling, we're just little heads in the snow. And as the snowball of the collective knowledge rolls, it rolls on us and pulls us out and makes us part of the collective, makes us part of the thinking thing, the engine of the filter. And a particular part of the snowball will fall on me. Maybe the part that gives me some interest in mechanics and science and that kind of thing. I'll have a certain determined impact, that the piece of the snowball that crushes me, that pulls me in. And somebody else, it might be a slum and alcoholism and drug addiction. Everybody's going to get impacted by a different piece of the ball. And so you can kind of think of the snowball as having all these little feet on the bottom of the ball. Now it's just covered with all our little feet are sticking out. And as the ball rolls, most of the time my little feet are going. I'm doing this and this and this. This shit doesn't matter. But every so often when it rolls, my feet are the ones that are going to hit the ground. And my feet are going to reflect where my head is in the ball. So, am I going to behave like a drug addict? Are my feet going to be drug addict influence? Or are my feet going to be person motivated to do better? Or what kind of feet are going to hit the ground? Feet that are thinking about where the ball's going and are going to try to push it somewhere when they have their chance? When they have their chance to be a meaningful butterfly? So that's how I changed the story. and try to explain how I wasn't arguing that the past is something to get over. I was arguing that the past is something that empowers us to move the future, to make the ball go somewhere, that we're just reading the past, that we're trying to find the best in the ball. If you're sitting there with your head in it, you're saying, what's the best of this thing that I can manifest into action? That kind of thing. Or maybe I see the golden rule over there and I say, well, god damn, that's a good piece of logic. I like that. I like that Ben Franklin stuff over there. Penny earned, penny saved is a penny earned. I like that. Pound of prevention, pound of cure, kind of ounce of prevention, pound of cure. I like that. Lots of little good things in here. And can I kind of push them into action when it's my turn? And I think that's happening with some feet. Like I said, some feet have no idea. They're just reflecting whatever's close. So whatever daddy did, they'll do. Whatever mommy says, they'll do. Whatever the media says, they'll do. So all of those influencers, the only influences, they're just obedient to the memes. And their minds aren't working hard enough at saying what's really the stuff here. They're not doing the Buddha shit and looking around and saying, what can I observe? They're just not spending any time doing it because no one taught them to spend some time. Just look, observe, and think about the things you see and what they mean and what they represent and what lies behind them, how they were constructed and all that stuff. They just ain't doing that. They're Homer Simpson. And, alright. So, yeah, so, and as I've stated in previous videos, and I think you're acknowledging that in a subtle way, I don't have any use for this idea of people getting what they deserve, only in the sense that it's got use to deterrence. And once deterrence is over, the use is over. So you could almost argue that, theoretically, if prisoners weren't visited, by loved ones or something, we could almost secretly have a Guantanamo Bay and just take the villains and send them to Australia and give them a good life. And the value of their deterrence would be just as good. I mean, obviously that's a different kind of circumstance, so I won't really want to compare that because that's terrorists and stuff, and obviously they're by definition dangerous if they were terrorists, which some of them are just taxi drivers. But anyway, so you could almost argue with religion. God put himself in a horrible dilemma. Let's say God was really a good guy and he was smart. He put himself in this terrible dilemma when if we argue that there's a religion that has a heaven and a hell. I think Islam is pretty overt about it. Yeah, there'd be no point in torturing the person with snakes if nothing's at stake anymore. So in a sense, God's deterrence could be false, because all he's depending on isn't people seeing hell, it's just hearing about it. So as long as he can maintain the lie, there would be no point in torturing anybody. It'd be silly. Right? Right. It's funny that some of his punishments he makes direct into the world, like, giving women pain in childbirth and a period. He made those visible, but most of his punishments he doesn't make visible. There's no indication of them. Can't see them anywhere. And if you did, it might make God a more rational choice, quite obviously. But anyway, enough said. I just want to get to the point that for an intelligence, it would be a terrible dilemma, because you're basically lying. Now we're back to this truth argument. And so if you want your creation to behave properly, you'd have to lie to them, because you're really not gonna unnecessarily harm something. So if you can fool them into believing it without harming something real, you would do it, because an intelligent thing would say, that's unnecessary harm. And I can get away with the lie, and the lie will spare all the prisoners wasted suffering. So you're stuck with a dilemma where you're going to have to be dishonest to be honest, or to show integrity towards the value you've placed on unnecessary pain. So I'm just saying, these are the kind of arguments I'd make, these kind of unresolvable quandaries where there's conflicting principles being violated that make life unlivable, that makes this a dumb things game, not a smart things game. A smart thing doesn't want to make choices between perfect principle and perfect principle. It doesn't want to have to compromise either one. A smart thing doesn't want to settle for a sloppy or imperfect or dishonorable. It wants something perfect, immaculate, peak performance. It doesn't build it with Chinese steel. It just doesn't say, let's go find some crappy parts to put in the device to make it break. Okay. Alright, so the last thing I'll get to is the guilt idea, which again I think you're always perverting into a negative force when I'm sort of arguing that it's like almost the reclamation that Fake Sagan was talking about, in terms of it's a rethinking, it's a regaining a better perspective. And so the penance, or the idea that you would, with your new reclamated understanding, that you would now have the reclamated understanding gives you motivation in and of itself, but clearly if you understand that you have in the past created some major deficit, that you've done some damage, that you've made some messes, that you would have the motivation, understanding that you've done that there's stuff you need to do a little more, you need to work a little harder to compensate for that mess making, that you have to do more cleaning. And so I'll go back to my timeshare argument, and it almost, I guess I could paraphrase you as almost saying that there's no such thing as a bad tenant, that there's almost no mess somebody could make in the timeshare that wouldn't be declarable as bad performance, as a life poorly lived, that you would almost say that can't be a life badly lived or something. I don't think you would say that, but some of what you say almost leads one to the conclusion that that's what you're saying, because you're almost not accounting for the fact that there is this ability, and that this ability to be shit doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what you did. It's what something else did to you. It's where the snowball landed on you, or where some other bad tenant did a bad thing. So I mean, I could describe a bad tenant who bangs up the furniture, makes, causes damage, breaks chairs, just kind of shit. And I could talk about a tenant who didn't really do anything wrong. It's just that he left a case of alcohol, and unfortunately the next tenant became an alcoholic, and he would have been an Einstein, but he was thrown away. He was ruined. And so it wasn't an act of volition, wasn't even almost you wouldn't say it was even an act of negligence. He might even have left it just thinking, oh well, I didn't drink all of this, I'll leave it for the next guy as a present. He might even have thought he was doing the world a favor. He was doing the condo a favor. And maybe for 99 out of 100 of the next tenants it would have been a favor. It would have been a wonderful gift. But for the one, it was the worst thing he could have done. He might have just shot him in the head. Might as well. Same difference. So we're now not talking about, in many cases, intent won't have anything to do with it, deserve won't have anything to do with it. But what I'm talking about is the part where we do have knowledge, where we have looked inside the snowball and we can see our feet are ready to hit the ground, and we are capable of being smart and making a good move, a move that's 99% sure to be a good move. And we certainly know what the 99% sure moves are that's not going to be a good move. You just know that, renting an elephant and have him sleep in the condo isn't going to be a good move. It's really hard to find any way to make that, to silver lining it somehow. That somehow the rest of the tenants are going to appreciate the elephant tax they're going to have to pay. They're all going to somehow benefit in some way from elephant, or that the downside of the elephant incident isn't going to outweigh any positive of the elephant incident. So I mean, I keep trying to do that. I keep trying to find examples of harms that are far enough over one side of the fence, and goods far enough on one side of the fence where we don't have to have debates about somebody being a masochist or some other silly example of how you can convert a clearly negative thing into some kind of positive. Because I think we know statistically the negatives are negative most of the time and the positives are positive most of the time, and there's none of this this convenient, because it happened once, I can poster child the one incidence and say I'm being honest to the truth. I think you might concede that wouldn't be honest to the truth to say that all good deeds go punished, or however that thing, all good deeds are whatever. But I'm just saying, no, it's not all, and it's not even most, I don't think. Yeah. So back to the condo, and I guess the test for whether we have anything to talk about is, I guess first, if you'll accept that there is such a thing as a life that is bad, that the impact of the life was to make the world harder to live in, for all of destiny it wasn't in any way, it was degraded. There was two choices: the path with this person in the world and the path without this person in the world, and clearly the path with that person is a degraded path, a substantially degraded path even, and that's clearly a possibility. And I guess I can just illustrate that, as like I said with the condo, is that it can happen in all kinds of malicious ways where people are deliberately, like smallpox Mary or whatever, that they just would be negligent and leave their, like they have herpes or something, they leave their herpes all over the timeshare, and people end up getting herpes because it's all over the place and they can't help it. These kind of things, that there's actions that are just stupid and damaging, and that's what they are. And it's not about punishing people for them. It's about acknowledging that it's best to prevent those, and you prevent them with this snowball, with this enlightenment thing, with this knowledge thing. And that's what I mean by the obligation. It's a simple truth that I think I spelled out, that the only way improvement, the knowledge of the past, what we have in our snowball, enlightenment, the only way it gets to the future is the feet have to walk it there. They have to, when it's their chance, they have to push the ball in the direction of that enlightenment, of the in reflection of that enlightenment. And if we slough off all of it, there's nothing. There's nothing but a bug. The kernel of our consciousness is a bug. It's not something brilliant. It's a small circle of crap. It's the small version of it. It's just consumption for the sake of consumption, for the sake of the reproduction. It's just this circle of consume to reproduce, consume to reproduce, consume to reproduce, without purpose or anything more complicated even having a chance to be involved. Alright, what else can be added? So, but again, I'll just reiterate where the real subject is the necessity or the obligation to the future victims, as I'm going to argue some of them are going to be, to clean out of this snowball. If you're going to make a future, then you have to make the spots ready for the new heads to get pushed in. And they have to be pushed into a good snowball, not drug addiction and slums and shitty lives, ruined lives that'll just be garbage lives. The snowball's got to start fixing the garbage in, garbage out problem by making sure it doesn't have garbage slots. It doesn't put conscious beings in garbage cans. And I guess that almost goes back to the metaphor I harp on Puro with the nest building. We're really just talking about the little bit of the meager acceptance of the meager amount of knowledge to accept the obligation that we have learned that a good nest is important, vital, and that you have a responsibility to build it. And that if you don't build it, you start losing substantially. You lose a substantial portion of any claim to any right to lay eggs. And I guess again I'll just conclude by arguing once again that I'm not the one that has to defend an aggression as much as you think I am. You are. You're the one doing the aggressive affirmative thing. My resistance or my me renouncing. Renouncing is not an act of aggression. It's the thing being renounced that is the aggression. And it must, when you make something, it's a lot different than when you say don't make it. Those two are very different things. And if you're going to make it, you should be damn sure it's worth making. You're the one that needs to justify the level of your confidence, where it's unassailable by an accusation of gross arrogance and an unqualified arrogance, especially in light of the fact that you're the one claiming all the uncertainty. You're the one uncertain of your knowledge. You're the one who doesn't think he's been enlightened to the status of a god. You're the one who, I mean, again, I'm just saying that if I can think of dilemmas that it appears God didn't think of, okay, he certainly didn't talk about the problems of being a creator in any book. These gods do seem like rather simple characters in history. The very fact that they describe their oh, I made a mistake. Yeah, I'm gonna flood everything and start over. The very fact that they were capable of something like that, without any introspection, without doing any personal critique, to blame their creation rather than their own creativity, is just so glaringly immature that you'd almost say, well, I mean, maybe I'm a double God. Maybe I'm not only a God, but I'm like a triple God. Because, shit, I can figure that out. So, you know, the word God doesn't mean too much when you have to deal with the practical gods of religion. Because they're not the omnipotent and perfect beings described to be by evidence of their own records. Their own records indicate, you know, it's like Donald Trump, their own records indicate they're a lying scumbag. You just can't have it both ways there, God. You can't tell me you're really smart and then you do stuff that's really fucking dumb. Like punishing all the children of Eve and killing all the sons of Pharaoh. But again, it's you who are claiming a lack of control, a lack of understanding, that we don't have a good map of reality, that we don't know where consciousness is, we don't know this, we don't know that. You're claiming all this, I don't know, and yet you're behaving as if you do, in my opinion. I'm saying I do know. I am afraid, responsibly. Not irresponsibly afraid, I'm responsibly afraid. I've done the math, and the numbers aren't good enough. And yeah. So I just think that I'm in a position, I'm in the stronger position to defend my resistance and my renouncements, because I think it's quite obvious. You've declared your lack of qualifications. You've declared them. You said, I'm unqualified, and now you're doing something as overt as not building a nest on top of it. In the sense that I'm not saying you personally aren't going to take responsibility for your child. I'm just saying that clearly you haven't given your child a world worth living in. Clearly every indicator indicates your child is not going to have the world you had to live in. The sand in the play box, right, has a lot of poop in it. I mean, this is not the same sandbox you sat in as a child. And these are all just facts. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to just put you on the defensive, but I mean, for the sake of it, I'm just saying that's part of this argument, that you're the one kind of with the extraordinary claims that has to provide at least ordinary evidence, and I'm arguing that I'm arguing pretty solid facts, and from a position where I don't have the same, you have to prove me unenlightened and unintelligent, because I claim I am enlightened and I am intelligent. And I didn't get it from me. I got it from 10,000 years of people trying to be enlightened and intelligent. Alright, I think that's enough. So, I don't want to just say the rest of your video was it didn't inspire anything immediate in me in terms of a reaction, so I don't have one. So if there are some points in the rest of the video you'd like me to pay better attention to, I'm willing. Keep talking and see where it goes. Just all might just turn into a song, you know, a piece of incomprehensible poetry. But, yeah, we both don't have. There's not much other game to play, so I guess it's you play football, I'll play baseball, and we'll see if it works. Until next time.